Awesome. Well, I was just, I'm very sorry that the eye is hurting her, but we'll pray
Yeah.
for her.
Yes.
Anyway, there's a lot of illness too, and Dan is doing better, he says, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'd like to, today, because we're 27 days away from an event where children are the victim of this mythology, the Roman false teachings have been inherited and downloaded into our society and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to point out the article that we have at tourazone.net and obviously at Lamb Legacy Foundation and probably on Natsarim Life. It's entitled Valentine's Day. We're 27 days away from it, and it is it's aimed at children. You remember it when you were in school. And Phyllis and I did a video that's about 25 minutes long where we just sit next to each other and talk about it, ask questions, and you can watch that too. And you can reach that video easily and the article to download if you go to fossilizedcustoms.com/valentine.html. And this is what I'd like to talk about today because it's the next pagan thing that's coming up on the horizon. What it is, it's syncretism, and I refer to that in this video too. Syncretism is making stuff mean other stuff, pagan faiths or pagan beliefs, and the worship of pagan idols is inherited from our fathers down through the centuries. And it came from Rome in this case. And there's another article called Idolatry, which you can look for. And these are all basically pointing to the fact that every single thing that's done that drives the economy of the whole world is idolatry. You remember Mother's Day, Father's Day, Halloween, Christmas, New Year's Day, Valentine's Day, and several others that are directly linked to the occult and they're occult because they're hidden, and they're what we call, there's two levels of the way they do this. There's the insider's view, which tells you the truth, and we're going to reveal the truth today, again, and in the video and in the article. But the truth is actually that this is a fertility festival. And it was adopted from Rome, and Rome's founders were mythological, Romulus and Remus, who were young boys who were unable to feed themselves, and they were raised by a she-wolf, a wolf. And this is a myth, but they were raised up and they were the founders of Rome. And every second Roman month, on the 15th, they would have these two young boys run around the city of Rome naked with little goat strips in their hands that had been dipped in blood. And they would, let's say, lash the posterior of young maidens. And they would, leave a whelp or at least a bloody strip on their posterior. And this was done to imbue fertility. And it was also an event where this is where Valentine's Day cards come from. They would put their names in a vat or a container, and they would draw their name out, and that would be the person's mate. They would, it's like going on a date, and they would, the woman would draw out a name and the man would draw out a name, and if they're single, and they would take that person on a date. Well, that's the Valentine's Day card deal, and your modern form of that hasn't changed very much. Be my Valentine. Well, to be your Valentine. But the name Valentine came from a man much later, around, I think, the 4th century. there's no real fixed date on this because the man was never, there's no evidence of his life ever having been lived. I mean, they just made this thing up. I think part of the syncretism blending was to conceal the pagan side of this so that they could invent a new idea. And then everybody grew up from that point thinking that there was a man named Valentine, and whether he was real or not, it doesn't really matter. It was used as a device to conceal something. When you cover up something that's pagan and you want to give it a new meaning, you have occulted the original. You're camouflaging it. You're hiding something. And that's called the occult because it's shadowed over. And the esoteric, there's two forms of looking at something that's pagan. You've got the esoteric view, and that's the insider's view that gives you the true meaning of it. And then you've got the outsider's view, which is called the exoteric. So you've got esoteric and exoteric. And all people in the world see today is exoteric. They just see the outside view. They're throwing rice at weddings, not knowing what it came from. See, we're tracking down origins. That's what we're doing. And when you find the origin of something, it's usually showing you something that's unpleasant. And I'd like to talk to you about that. This website, fossilizedcustoms.com/Valentine.html is what we'll be going by just briefly here. The origins of Valentine's Day is a Roman feast, and it's called Lupercalia. And that's because the wolf that raised Romulus and Remus and the festival that they observed, celebration, was named after the Roman name Lupus, and it's wolf, celebrating Romulus and Remus. And you can download this if you go to this website as a tract, and you can get this article called Valentine's Day. And you can also watch this 25-minute video. There's a link, right? It's near the top of the page. And I've got a picture here of an ivy leaf wreath of a Roman deity that was the involving the heart symbol, the arrow, and he was the deity of wine and debauchery. In fact, the word debauchery is coming from this deity's name, Bacchus. That's what they called him. And his other name in Greek was Dionys, the deity of wine and orgies. And it gives us our word, debauchery. What is the heart-shaped symbol? Everybody wants to know. It means something different today, but what it is an ivy leaf. And that's because this deity of wine wore a wreath on his head, and the leaves of the ivy leaf look like little hearts. And that's what you see on this website when you go to it. Now, the symbol of this deity, Bacchus, is the male deity of wine and orgies, and you get the word debauchery from his name. And he corresponds to Nimrod, and Nimrod reincarnated as Tammuz, and also the archer. They named a constellation after him, Sagittarius, or Cupid, the little fat little baby with the wings and the little bow and arrow. You see, that's just a miniature version of this arrow thing. All the Nimrod characters seem to have a weapon, and it's usually an archery deal. They've got a bow and arrow. Well, there's an arrow involved in this festival too. And his other name is Orion, the hunter. Well, he's hunting. Well, they draw pictures of star connections in the sky, which are not really there. That's the worship of the host of heaven. Totally illegal. Just like this festival is. When you celebrate Valentine's Day, you're doing something extremely evil. It's idolatry. Or celebrating a birthday. It's all evil, and they don't know it because it's occulted. They don't know it's about fertility. The rebirth of the sun is what Christmas really is. Now the arrow is in the little bow and arrow with the little CUPID, little fat little cherub. He's holding a bow and arrow, and people have prayed to this thing. It's a deity, and they want someone to fall in love with them, so they pray to this little cherub. There's even popular songs within the last 50 to 60 years that have been mentioning this CUPID. You'll hear it and you go, wait a minute, there it is again. Anyway, the arrow penetrating the heart symbol represented mating. That's because the heart is the female item, and the arrow is obviously the male item. And this deity is seen in art wearing a wreath of ivy leaves on his head during the mating rituals. The familiar heart symbol comes from pagan Rome and echoes their idolatry as the symbol of this BACCHUS deity. And the occulted or hidden meaning behind all symbols of witchcraft are on two levels. Like I said, esoteric, the inside view, which tells the real meaning, and only the initiated are able to discover this. And then the exoteric, the outsider's view, the surface meaning that's shown to the masses. Now, fertility drives all the world's celebrations. There's something wrong with every one of them. And when you find out what's underneath the thing in the meaning, you will discover the truth. But they'll often say, well, it doesn't mean that to me. Well, it does to the one that created you. And that's why you should pay attention, because he's going to burn the earth. Anyway, they spin, they twist and spin everything so that it doesn't seem to mean what it really is. They're changing things into other meanings. Now, they only show you the familiar with the exoteric outsider view, so that the esoteric meaning seems ridiculous when they hear it. And that's what people are probably going to watch this and say, well, that's ridiculous. That's not what we mean by that. And the Christmas trees, the wreaths, the MAY poles, where they have ribbons wrapping around a pole and a wreath, lowering over it. These are eye-opening things. Rabbits, eggs. And it's also, you don't seem to be seeing the truth, and it doesn't seem to be connected immediately. But once you see it, you can't go back and go, oh, I can't unsee that. It's over, And the truth is being shouted from the rooftops. Now, all this stuff is all a form of witchcraft. That means rebellion. And it's closely related to all the other fertility customs. As Arthur Conan Doyle, a promoter of Spiritism, once said in one of his books, you see, but you do not observe. That's pretty amazing. So if you go to this website, you'll see some images that will open your mind. And there's another thing that happens when a business opens up. It has a ribbon cutting ceremony. That's ugly, what that really represents. You'll find out what that is. The Greek deity of wine and debauchery was Dionysus, and the Roman equivalent of that was this BACCHUS. All right, let's see. An archaeological discovery was made at the site of the ancient city of Ephesus, or Ephesus, yeah. It was a sign indicating directions to a brothel, and it depicted three words, or I mean, three symbols: a woman, a heart, and a foot. In other words, this is the way. Walk in it. That's not good. Basically, they were saying, walk this way for sex. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the coastal cities, like BYBLOS, that was giving the word for paper, because that's, they made parchment there. And it was one of those coastal cities where rich merchants would be going by and they'd stop for supplies or food. But a lot of times they were stopping to pay homage to one of the deities there. And one of the deities in this ancient coastal city along a little bit north on Israel's coast was the city BYBLOS, and they were there for sexual tourism. They had a temple there dedicated to BIBLIA. That was the symbol, that was the name of the deity. And merchants in like Makkah or Mecca, they were brothel cities. And you all need to know this, and they were all over. You know, there was some in Greece, you know, the nation they call Greece, the land of Greece. They had, or the Hellenists, they had all sorts of little temples. And the women of the city came out. They had male and female prostitutes, you know. So that's what Yehuda himself, one of the leaders of the one that gave the tribe Yehuda its name, he failed to give his daughter-in-law his next son in line, because her husband died and Yehuda's son had died, and he had not given his next son the woman. So she was upset because he had sent her back to her father's house. And so what happened was, he was going out for some sexual tourism, and he was going along a road, and she had posed herself in a burqa, you know, covered herself completely. That's what the burqa was for, to cover them. And the prostitutes couldn't be recognized. And so he had sex with his daughter-in-law, and she became pregnant subsequently and had two boys inside of her womb, and that was Zerah and Perez. Zerah and Perez is the one who is in the line of the Mashiach. Yahusha came through him. But Zerah was the first one to be actually accounted for as the firstborn, but he wasn't given that lineage. So because when the boys were being born, the first thing that happened was Zerah, whose name means scarlet, poked his hand out, and the midwife put a little ribbon on it, or a red thread, but he pulled himself back in, or maybe he was pulled back in by the brother. And the other one came out. Perez comes out. Well, Perez, his name means breach. Of course, they didn't get their names until after, but you know, they and that was a breach in the firstborn birthright, you know, because the firstborn was the one that came out first, but he didn't get it. So these are all effects, you know, that kind of we read about in scripture, but we kind of don't get it, you know. It just kind of goes in one ear and out the other usually. But there's a lot of symbolism in this too. So there's Yahusha told us, when you come into the land, okay. Now they're in the wilderness, let's say. They came out of Egypt, they come into the land finally after 40 years. And he says, when you come into the land, which Yahuwah, your Elohim, is giving you, do not learn to do according to the abominations of these Gentiles. Now that's at Deuteronomy 18, verse 9. There's a lot of witchcraft and divination that's, forbidden in that chapter. But ignorantly, people get they just blend in with this stuff, and they don't even know where it came from. Like the scrying balls, they look into these balls and tell the future. This is all witchcraft. And it was Yahusha that said at Matthew 10:26, what has been concealed will be revealed. And it's happening in the last days. The Natsarim are tearing down strongholds and false reasonings. You can't just make this stuff up or reinvent pagan customs and then pretend that it doesn't mean that to you.
Right.
See, that's what's happened. Well, we won't go over that. There's some things here that you might want to just read on your own, about 2/3 of the way down. There's symbols of fertility used by pagans that were adopted and hidden, and they're in plain sight. Steeples, obelisks, Christmas trees, the ornaments on the trees, the tinsel, the witch hats, pillars, and of course, the rice at the weddings. They speak of fertility. Anyway, the Ephesians 4, 2 verses, 17 through 19, it's 3 verses. Paul writes to the Ephesians saying this, so this I say and witness in the Master, that you should no longer walk as the Gentiles walk in the futility of their mind, having been darkened in their understanding, having been estranged from the life of Elohim because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of their heart, who, having become callous, have given themselves up to indecency, to work all uncleanness and greediness. They're greedy, and they make money on this stuff. They'll be glad to sell you a Valentine's Day card or a Christmas tree or a pumpkin. And so you can do this. And the dragon is responsible, though, who wages war against the covenant and the bride of Mashiach, presently controlling the kingdoms through 3 estates: the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners, or the laity. And we're in a mold. We're trapped. Only some of us have escaped. It's a mental prison, is what it is. That's what a stronghold is. The teaching authority of Babel is called a beast, and currently resides in the most powerful empire, Rome, the seat of Hashatan. And this bureaucracy will not perish until Yahusha returns. It's going to be here until he burns it up. All he's going to say is one word. I don't know what he'll say, but it'll be something like stop. It'll be over. Anyway, the bureaucracy that's running the world is everywhere. The beast. It's not coming. It's been here. It's in 4 stages. You've got 4 beasts that are all part of the big chimera, a big giant blend of all of them together. The 4th beast. Pagans used fire to worship the sun. So what they do is they run up to Mount Olympus and they have a big parabolic mirror. I think Pythagoras invented the idea of a parabolic mirror. He fried some ships in a harbor one time. Anyway, that they light this torch on Mount Olympus, and then they carry it to an Olympic game. And the word Olympic comes from Mount Olympus, which was where the deities of the Greeks resided. And they light this cauldron, which is an altar to Zeus. And they think, oh yeah, this is great. And of course, when they were doing their games in Greece, they were naked, They didn't have any shame. They were, just competing with each other. And but anyway, it was all for the sky deity. The presence of the deity was the fire in the torch lit from the sun. Well, this stuff means something. It doesn't mean that to the people watching, and the media is not going to tell you because they really don't care. But it's all about greed and money. Now, each year on February, February, the second Roman month, which is a fake month, on the 15th, a purification festival was held, which was called Lupercalia. That's what they're going to be doing in 27 days. They moved it to the 14th. And we talked about this. I'm just running down the mountaintops here, showing you how it was absorbed and it became conditioned and programmed into our lives when we're born here. And then when we wake up, we used to do childish things. Well, now we're adults. We don't do childish things anymore. Or do we? They'll say, that's what we heard. We heard our relatives say, oh, you're depriving the children of all this fun so that they can hand it down to their children, and but we wouldn't buy that. That's not everything's got an excuse. And I just wanted you all to know, and I'd like to open it up to your discussion if you want to ask any questions about that or anything else that might be on your mind.
That was good, Lew. Thank you. I'll have the videos. You did a coffee chat about Valentine's Day, so we'll put that up from several years ago. I have turned all those things on the Lamb Legacy website. It's on the front page, so if you want to see them in a hurry before I get them up on Natsarim Life, you can go there. Of course, you can go to Lew's website to see them. Well, the video, but not the copy. The copy thing you have to get on our site. So they're there. So we did have one question I'd like to try to answer today before we take any more questions. And it came in from Shelley, and she heard something on another video that led her to be confused. And she was wondering about sin being in the time of the millennium. Did I say that right, Phyllis? Did I get that right? Yeah. If you could, is sin going to be there, or will it not be there?
That's a great question, and I will attempt to answer it as best I can from the knowledge of Scripture. And that is that when we review the period of time where Revelation reveals the future a little bit, we've got the return of Yahusha, which begins the millennium of 1,000 years. And then during that time, there is flesh that is reproducing. So that there's going to be an army at the end of the 1,000 years, and they're going to be born in the mind of the flesh. But we're going to be there, his Natsarim, who will be teaching them during that time and telling them how dangerous it is. But every single person can be raised in the truth and rejected when they become of age. But children, when they're born, are innocents. And this is a theory of mine. It's not necessarily true, but the people who have been mentally impaired so that their minds are like children, or they are in fact children, are completely innocent. And that's why Yahusha told us, let the little children come to me. Don't hold them back. But when we understand that children are innocent, we can see at the end of days when he burns the earth and he removes all of the disobedient inhabitants from the earth, there's going to be some that are innocent. And those would be children or people who are mentally unable to comprehend anything above a small child. Wow. I've known people that have been like children, and they're old, but they never went beyond a certain point. Sure. the children are innocent. So he would be unlikely to punish the inhabitants of the earth, which would include these innocents. So they're going to be growing up into adulthood, and they'll be probably the people that are reproducing and will have to be guided in the truth. The truth is the Ten Commandments. And that's what we try to instill in them so that they'll obey them. And then he will give their spirit to them, because he's never going to stop endowing us with his spirit. He's going to be fully in us. And we won't have any more questions like this. We'll already know, because his mind will be in total, absolute control of our mind instead of the other way around. We won't be asking him questions. But this is going to be marvelous. And he'll be doing things greater than he ever did when he was walking here among us, through all of us as a body, greater things. And because he's one spirit, and we'll be one body. And that's just a small glimpse of what understanding, as I've walked with him to understand what it's going to be like.
Wow.
We really don't know exactly. But in answer to the question, that's where the children, I think, are going to reproduce, because they'll get older. And then there's going to be people that will be in the mind of the flesh. And then when they begin to walk in his word, abide in his word, and you're truly his taught ones, and you'll know the truth, because that's the truth. And the truth will set you free. But you see, the thing that is the variable here is, right now, we've got demonic presences everywhere here. They hate us. They want to kill us and destroy all creation if they could. But these demons are going to be bound for 1,000 years. The dragon and all of his followers, 1/3 of the Malachim. And so when they're bound in the abyss or the pit, they'll be released at the end of the days for a short time. And that's when they're going to mislead people ferociously, the ones that are still in the mind of the flesh. So there's going to be sin all throughout, except afterwards there won't be. He's going to overcome that. Sin and death are going to vaporize after the millennium, but you got to get past the great white throne judgment. And that's the judgment of Hashatan and his followers in the Malachim. And then all those that have ever lived that have refused the truth. And that's what we're here for. We're here to help people be restored to favor with Yahuwah and understand, hey, look, these are their laws. This is an eternal law. There's another law that was concerning animal blood that was written on a scroll and hung beside the ark, that the Christians have been trained to think is the Ten Commandments inside the ark. And it's not true. The animal blood and the priesthood that oversaw that is obsolete, and it's never going to come back. Wow. There's not going to be any more animal sacrifices for sin. That would be an insult to the spirit of Yahusha, an insult. And that's what Paul talks about. It would be you're insulting the spirit of favor by reverting back after you've heard the truth and understood the truth, and then you revert back. It's a dog returning to his vomit.
There's no way back when you do that.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a perfect environment, and within that perfect environment, there will be people who somehow make it through all of the mess that's going to happen, and they'll be in a perfect environment, and they still have the right to make the choice for Yahuwah.
Yes.
At the end of the day, and there's possibility of sin when those of us who have gone through everything and end up in the New Jerusalem with our new bodies and all that, we're not going to be in a place where we will ever want to sin again. that's
Oh, we'll
not
be fully inhabited.
right.
Yeah, he'll have total control over us. He protects us from the inside and the outside. Well, Revelation 22, around verse 14 and 15, it discusses, blessed are those who are doing his commandments, not washing their robes. That's what a lot of translations say, and that's not true. That there's a distinction between, see, that's part of the twisting of scripture.
Sure.
We can detect the errors. Blessed are those doing his commandments, that they might have the right to the tree of life and to enter into the gates of the city. But outside are the dogs. I can't tell you how they got there, but if they're out there, I don't know how that works, but who does, you know?
Well, eventually we'll know how that works, because
Yeah.
we don't need to know yet. Well,
No.
we're on as to need no basis, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
But it's interesting that all that we learn and do now is going to help us help all those folks later. So anyway, it's important to learn the language as far as I'm concerned. Okay, Ted, go ahead.
My question, I think, is probably a very quickly answered. I was just wondering, when you were speaking of the cities that were seaport cities, and one of them had the Lady Biblia in it. I was just wondering, I can't remember what the original name of the city was, whether it was Sidon or Tsor, or if I'm wrong on both of those. And I was wondering if you might be able to enlighten me on that.
As far as I know, the Biblia idols temple was in the city of Byblos, and that was a separate city from those other two. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I've got everybody's attention. I'd like you to visit a YouTube website too, for just the reading of fossilized customs. There's a lady that is apparently a college student, and she's been reading that book and sections of it, and her YouTube site is this. And I think we sent that to Margaret yesterday. She's doing a great job, you know.
Yep. We put that up on the gathering the other day too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So have to check her out, see how she's doing. Give her some support, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
She did mention that she got some new viewers,
Yeah.
subscribers.
Great. That's fantastic. I'm glad that she's getting some. That's great.
Yeah, Mom and I went and watched her for a little bit, and we subscribed to her channel and liked a couple of the videos and what have you, and left a message for her that she was doing a really good thing and all that. So
she's very expressive, and she emphasizes things really well. Yeah.
Dad, why didn't you invite her to Natsarim Live? I know you didn't, because I seen that video. I asked the question on there. It's like, why didn't you invite her?
Well, Joseph, did you?
Yes, I did. Yes,
because I knew you would do it, Brother Joseph. And I was passing the buck.
Okay.
I think you're passing the buck. I do believe that's what you're doing. Yep, I think so. Yes, Rule.
Is microphone?
Yes.
Yeah. Can Lou put up that card again so I can get the website?
Oh.
Yeah, I think Brother Tad was taking care of Mom, so he didn't have time to do it.
Good answer.
That's not quite the truth, because we did that before she fell.
That's That's funny.
Right?
Would it help if we read it? It's Yah's infinite wisdom and one
Yeah.
word. It's the
Yeah,
channel,
but
the
so
YouTube
yeah. Oh
channel.
yeah. Okay, she's getting it.
You'll recognize her if one of her videos comes up. She has very big eyes. She really has very expressive eyes.
Yes.
Due to heavy makeup.
Yes,
You can
infinite.
tell she's a college student. She's young. She's young. Girl. Sweet girl.
She reads from the BYNV also. You can look through her videos and
And Reapers. Yeah.
Very
We'll
good.
check her out.
Very good. Very good.
She's doing a good job. And when you help her get noticed and share her videos with others, it's going to be one more thing that's going to be getting the truth out, and they can hear scripture and Yahuwah's point of view.
Go ahead.
In terms of addressing one another, Yahusha said, oh, when he was about to leave, they were saying, well, who's going to be in charge after he leaves? Let's see, who's the greatest here? Well, the one that's the greatest among us is the servant of all of us. And he gave us the example. He said, you're all brothers, so address one another as brothers and sisters. And don't call me elder. I don't see an example of that from scripture. And I don't want to start a precedent where the Natsarim start having elders. We are elders. We're all at different levels, but let's call ourselves brothers and sisters. Is that a good idea? And I'm not trying to be artificially humble. I'm just trying to set a precedence a little bit. And we're about, at least I am as a researcher, what I do is I show people that obedience is what he wants. That's what he wants. And there's nothing greater than obeying. I mean, it's greater than sacrifice, obedience. And that's what I focus on. And I look for origins, of course, as you know, track down the origins. So anyway, I hope that is a little bit of a moderating correction before we get too entangled in habits,
You know, I noticed that started with folks about a week ago, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I need to correct, and not correct, but I need to get this changed. And so I'm glad you went ahead and did it.
Yeah, I thought I'd cover that. And we may have to review it later. And please tell other people the same thing. We're brothers and sisters, and nobody's in charge except Yahusha. That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, may Yahuwah bless you and guard you. May Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and show kindness to you. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And then they will place my name on the children of Israel, and then I myself will bless them. Baruch haba b'shem Yahuwah.
Very good.
Shem Yahuwah.
Baruch haba.
Baruch haba b'shem Yahuwah.
Baruch haba b'shem Yahuwah. I'll get it right in a minute.
You'll get it. I'll see you all.
Love ya.
When I
Love
say
ya.
Love ya.
Love you all.